Let's go over the material real quick to start this. I've got this 5/4 deck board. I've got this 1.5 by 1.5 square tube and 1.5 by 1.5 angle iron. I will also have to have some adjustable feet on this. We'll get to that later. All right, let's get this stuff cut up. All right, here's 2 pieces to the tabletop frame. Sometimes I miter and sometimes I notch. I'm going to notch this one. So I've just got a framing square set, and I've just got it lined up on the outside here. I just slide my framing square over. There we go, just like so, and then there we go. So what I'm going to cut out is just this piece. I'm just going to cut up and over. "50 inches. From there to there, 50 inches. You can weld this up solid if you want to. I'm not going to. I'm just putting some little short welds here and there. Little short weld here. The top side you're not going to see, obviously, because of the wood. So I'm not going to put anything here or here. I'm going to put a little weld on the inside. Show you what I got. You know, like I always do, I just got rid of the burrs, just broke the edge. I'm going to add 1 piece of angle here. I've got my center brace, got it notched out. I'm just using this bar clamp just to squeeze this in a little bit. So I've got my center brace welded in. I'm going to work on these legs next. This is what the leg's going to look like. I'm only going to have 1 vertical on each side. You know, it's not a big table, and just trying to save on some metal. It's just going to have a couple of drinks on it, you know, while we're hanging out in the hot tub. I just hit it with a flap disc real quick. You could have used a wire wheel, a wire brush, needle scaler. I just wanted to knock the slag off of the weld before I ran back through it. Even though these welds are pretty dirty anyway. Quick close-up shot, it's still got slag on it. It's flux core, it's not perfect. Got a little bitty hole burned in right there. A lot of spatter with flux core. I'm gonna grab a flap disc. Here, I'll show you the back side here. There's the back side. I'm going to grab the flap disc and we'll knock these welds down just a little bit. Nothing, you know, I'm not trying to make them perfect. That little crater there, that's just from the heat, you know. But you can see how it melts into the metal and then the puddle fills it up. Since I'm kind of engineering this as I go, I'm going to have to add a bar from here to here, just, you know, another piece of tube, square tube, 1.5 by 1.5. This angle iron that I'm using is flimsy, so the leg's just gonna flop out, and that one just flop out. I guess that's why I see so many of these tables with that bar down there. I was trying not to use any unnecessary steel that I didn't have to. One thing I did on my leg where it's gonna weld to the table frame is I just beveled this right here with a flap wheel or a flap disc, and that's just because the inside of this angle iron, you know, is rounded. it just allows it to come over and sit flat against this outside here a little better. So I took my tape measure and I just pulled a measurement from here to here, inside to inside. I got 44 1/4 inches. So that's what I'm going to cut. This 1.5" tube, that's going to go right here. I don't want to completely weld this up until I get it attached to the frame. So I've just got a couple of tacks at the top here and then down at the bottom, and before I weld this up I just wanted to set it on the floor to just see what it looks like. I mean, it looks good. A lot of spatter with flux core. That's the, it's a big difference between this and MIG welding, which is, with gas. I like doing these little flux core projects. I mean, this is just a little 135 machine. It works off of 110. It doesn't take a whole lot of power, especially for this thinner stuff. I didn't even show you my welds. I don't know how good the light is, but I mean, that's got slag on it. But that's got a lot of slag on it. You can really see all the spatter with flux core. Definitely not as pretty as MIG welding. Well, you can't see that at all. That's too dark. I think we're done. Well, you know what? I'm not done. I'm gonna cap these, and I gotta weld the nuts in here for the adjustable feet. Okay, so I got my table flipped upside down here. Now we're gonna work on the adjustable feet. This is 1/2 inch all thread or threaded rod. All thread may be a brand. I'm used to calling it all thread, but it's just a threaded rod. Got this nut here. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill a hole here. I'm gonna lay that nut down in the hole. We'll weld it up, and then this will be able to thread down in there. So I started with 1/4. This nut right here is roughly 3/4 or so. We may have to waller it a little bit, but you could use a hole saw. I mean, sometimes I do. Sometimes I just step it up. I'm gonna start with 1/4. And I've got a bunch of other sizes, but I'm just going to jump to a 3/8 to a 1/2 and then to 3/4. Well, this nut's a little bigger than I thought it was to start with. I think what I'm going to do is use this unibit. Some people call it a step bit. I'm really liking this. I'll give you a close-up here. That is going to give me a real nice edge to weld to. I like that. I may start using these a lot. Most of the time what I do is I'll take a nut and put it down inside there where the top is flush. But man, I really like that. So I just threaded this down in here because I was worried I was going to get a little bit of spatter down in the thread and not be able to clean it out, which most of the time, little wire brush or something, you can knock it out of there. I got all my nuts welded in there. Got to get them cleaned up. Just going to hit them with a wire wheel. This is the little notch that I cut out, and I'm just going to use it to cap these ends. One of the last couple of videos I did, I showed where I just take the little scrap piece, I'll tack it on, and then I'll take my angle grinder with a cut-off wheel, and then I'll cut the overhang off. And I like to, cheat it in a little bit. It just gives me somewhere to lay that wire. So I got this thing wiped down with acetone. You know, you can use acetone or paint thinner. The two of those work really good. I'm gonna spray just a light coat of primer. This is just what I bought. Well, these fumes are getting thick. And got a lot of lint from the dang paper towels I was using. I thought I wiped it down pretty good. It is the next day. This thing has had 24 hours to dry. I have a couple of things that I want to do before I put the finished paint color on here. I want to get the holes drilled in this metal frame. Using the Flux core welder, I got a lot of porosity down here when I capped these holes. I'm just going to take a little bit of body filler and take care of those. Instead of just keep welding, grinding, I'm just going to throw some body filler down there. So I just threw my boards up here just to get an idea of where my holes. I'm just going to do 2, 2, and 2. The same for the middle and the other end, and then I'll just come up from the bottom, and if it pulls loose I can always through bolt it. Got a bunch of 1/4-inch holes drilled in here, so it's probably going to dry really quickly, but I'll just show you how I mix mine up. This stuff separates when it sits. So if you just take the cap off and you know, you'll pour a bunch of the liquid out of there. It's probably still gonna happen a little bit anyway, but it's all right. It's all right. It doesn't take much hardener. I mean, you know, if you're doing a whatever, something like this doesn't really, the ratios, you know, just as long as it gets hard. If you're in a body shop doing this professionally, I would definitely suggest reading the manufacturer's instructions and getting the mixtures right. That's it. You don't have much working time. Here we go. We got a little hole here. And this is just you know, we're just gonna fill it in. We got a little, you know, just a little porosity. What is that? Well, it's really hot out here today, so but to see my little pinholes, that's all I'm doing. This stuff is about dried out here, so I don't have much working time with it. MIG welding is definitely not as bad, but as the slag gets down into the, you know, gets trapped down in the puddle there. But anyways, I tend to get a little more of this with flux core, especially like capping stuff. But MIG welding, you know, it's a lot easier to. The problem with going back and you know, you really, to get rid of this when you're welding, you really need to knock slag off, come back, you know, fill it in, knock the slag off, fill it in, knock the slag off, fill it in. And on this thin metal, when I kind of just light up, let that cherry die down, light up, let the cherry die down, you know, it's just it's like catching a bunch of that slag in there, and so it's not as good of a weld. But, you know, it kind of is what it is on this. So anytime that I'm using a body filler, I mean, everybody's heard of the name Bondo. I like Evercoat brand better than Bondo, but if you go to Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, you know, any of your hardware stores, they're more than likely going to have these small cans of the Bondo brand. You know, I'm not as big of a fan of that as I am Evercoat. But, you know, for convenience, it's easier, and it doesn't have a shelf life. You know, I mean, I'd say 6 months, and this stuff dries out. You know, don't go buy the big gallon can of this stuff. I mean, I use this for woodworking, metalworking, but I just use little dabs here and there. I almost need to go get spot putty. You know, I used to use a lot of spot putty on stuff, and that's what I really need, like a. I think I used to call it a glazing putty. But anyways, so I always just keep a window scraper is what I call this, or a scraper, flat scraper, straight scraper, window scraper. And, you know, every time I make a new little batch, the stuff just comes right off of here. Just like that. You know, it's good. These blades, you know, you can buy a 50 or 100 pack, and you know, I haven't bought any blades in probably 5 years. I mean, they just last forever, and you know, I use them a lot. I got all my body filler sanded down. I got it retouched up again with some more primer. And I kind of went over this whole thing lightly with some sandpaper just to try to get rid of some of the lint and the, you know, stuff that was in the paint. But we are fixing to put some pink on here. This is poppy pink. I don't know. It was the only one they had at Lowe's the other day. Oh, that is bright stuff. My arms are getting sticky. I see a lot of people using Montana. That stuff is crazy. It's crazy expensive just for little cheap, you know, projects. Oh, just making runs. Look at that. It's a good one. And it's dark over here. Yeah, my lighting in here is terrible. Not just for filming, but for seeing. And I have sanded and wiped and blown, and I still got crap on. You know, there's just, look, I got a little bug right here. You know, I know you're supposed to spray a real light tack coat, but man, it's easy to just jam with paint and just hammer it down. You know, it takes a minute for it to cure. It takes a while for it to cure. And once it does, even cheap spray paint, you know, when it gets cure, anywhere from like 7 to 30 days. I mean, definitely 30 days, man. It gets super hard. You can take your nail and you might like put a mark on it, but you won't scratch it off as long as the metal's cleaned, okay? Oh, we missed a spot. While my paint is drying, I'm going to work on these boards. You know, they come factory with this rounded edge. And then obviously I don't have it here on the end, so I'm just going to take my router. I'm going to round this over to match the rest. You can see where I stopped with my bit here. It's off just a little bit, but instead of having to reroute the whole thing, I'm going to hit this with a sander before I paint it, just to kind of open that grain up a little bit and help it take the paint better. When I hit this with a sander, that'll just blend right in, but you can see where it's a much better end than just having an old chopped off square end. I'm going to go ahead and paint these feet with the same gray primer, and I think I'm just going to leave them gray. But I will get them cut down once I get the table around to the back of the house and I know how long they need to be. All right, beautiful. When I paint or stain or clear both sides of just, small projects, I usually just take a board. Well, I keep a few of these around. Got some nails, I've got a few that's got screws, and they actually sell things that are made for finishing both sides at one time, and to keep the piece you're working on up off of your table or workbench so that you can finish the edges without it sticking. I just have the frame laying on the boards. I found these pan head screws, and I'm going to try to use these. And if it doesn't hold or they pop loose as they dry out, sometimes they want to twist and pop loose, then I'll just get some carriage bolts and I'll just through bolt them to the metal frame. Check it out, here it is. Got the table done. I may put a second coat on this, I'm not sure, but I am done for now. You can see how much longer these feet are than these. This concrete has a massive, massive slope. I think it turned out good. Once I get this deck rebuilt, I'm going to build a few more things to go back here just to bring a little more color back here. And hopefully this has helped somebody, or somebody will get an idea or something out of it. And I will see you on the next one.